Good morning, it's Lisa with Lisa Heal Yourself, and today I want to talk about parts work. I want to break it down. I want to give you the simple version about what it is and how to do it. So first I want to just go back and remind you that if you're dealing with chronic illness, chronic symptoms, chronic disease, whether it's mental, emotional, or physical, then you've experienced some trauma. Your nervous system has been dysregulated. Now, whether you believe you had a traumatic incident or a trauma, a single trauma or a series of traumas that led to this, the fact is that if you have a chronic condition, then you have a dysregulated nervous system. So in order to regulate our nervous system, we must go back and get our body out of fight or flight, right? We must find a way to calm down our central nervous system. And a lot of times that is trying to get ourselves to feel safe, calm, relaxed, right? Safe in our own being. So to get our central nervous system to calm down so that we can feel safe, we have to deal with what's happening inside the trauma. We have to deal with the feelings and the emotions that are going on that are producing us not to feel safe. These parts within us that are traumatized are usually the parts of ourselves that jump into action to protect us against danger. So you could be controlling, you could be defensive, you could be judgmental, you could be critical, you could be irrational, you could be needy, you could be all these things. These are protector qualities. So parts of yourself come alive, parts of yourself step into action, should I say, whenever they kind of sense danger in order to protect you and keep you safe. So it's not that you want to be controlling, or it's not that you want to act this way, but you do. And your subconscious is allowing this to happen because that part is protecting another more vulnerable part. So parts work is all about, there's usually two parts of you. There's a protector part and a vulnerable part. The part that got hurt, the part that feels alone, the part that is scared, the part that is abandoned. This part, there's a part of you, right, that doesn't feel like it's capable or strong enough. And there's another part of you that has come in to protect that part, right? The controlling part, or whatever part, whatever you kind of lean towards as your go-to in order to keep you safe. And when you're under stress, a lot of times you act out in a certain way or you exhibit a certain pattern. So we have a part that's meant to protect us because you've experienced some sort of a trauma in the past. Your fight or flight isn't working properly, and you have these parts that are there trying to keep you safe, keep things from getting too overwhelming, to keep you from feeling too out of control, too unsafe, right? And so this part comes up as a protector to this vulnerable part who's a child, who doesn't know what they're doing, who's scared, who feels incapable. And so you have these two parts of yourselves. And this is essentially what parts work is all about. Really, it's inner work. It's any kind of inner work. But there is a Internal Family Systems, IFS. I read this book probably 5 years ago, and I so resonated with it. Only it was complicated, right? Like, how many parts do we have? How do we have all this dialogue with all these different parts? And they all have different names and different jobs and different roles. And it got confusing. And I felt overwhelmed because even though I totally resonated with Internal Family Systems, I also felt exhausted by it. I felt like, well, how can I ever, do this? How can I ever work with all my parts, right, to integrate them all? It just seems so complicated and overwhelming. So I gave up on it. But I realized over time, doing this work, that, all the inner work must take into account integrating yourself back together into a whole being, and working with the different parts of you that have been hurt and kind of isolating them out that way is super helpful. So let's simplify it and let's make it easy so that everyone can do this and it's not overwhelming and it just becomes a normal part of the inner healing work that you need to do. So any kind of trauma means that you have been fragmented. So the starting place is to understand fragmentation. So again, if you haven't seen my video on fragmentation, this is the spot to watch it. You really need to watch that first. You need to understand what fragmentation is, because parts work builds on top of understanding that when we're traumatized, we're fragmented. And understanding that fragmentation helps you understand parts work. For those of you who aren't going to watch that video right now, here's a quick overview of fragmentation. It's when you're traumatized, or when something happens and your nervous system is in fight or flight for an extended period of time. That's considered trauma. And you fragment into a bunch of different pieces. So just imagine you dropping a glass or a bowl on the ground and it shattering. That's what happens. Parts of yourself break apart. The whole is still there because the glass bowl is still on the ground. It's still there. All the pieces that make it whole are still there, but they have broken apart and they need to be put back together, back into the whole, because they've fragmented from themselves in order to protect themselves. So this is where you get the parts from. It's the fragmented pieces after the trauma, after the shattering happens on the ground, when you feel like you're broken. That's just the glass pieces that are laying there, and you need to pick them up and put them back together, integrate them. That's what's called integration work, or the inner work, so that you can integrate your being back together. It's like picking up those pieces and gluing them back so that the whole becomes the bowl again. They're no longer fragmented laying on the ground. Okay, so think of those pieces on the ground as the parts that we want to work with now. And also remember that really it comes down to two main parts. You have the vulnerable part, and you have the part that's trying to protect that vulnerable part from ever getting hurt again, from this ever happening again, right? So there are a lot of parts. Yes, there's a lot of pieces of that vase or that bowl on the ground, but it sort of can be placed into two categories, right? The parts that are trying to protect it from ever getting hurt again, and the parts that are hurt. The parts that are hurt and the parts that are protecting it from getting hurt again. The thing is that we consider ourselves whole, right? Like you are you. So I'm Lisa. I'm like one being, one whole thing. But we forget that there's different parts of us, right? There's like our eyeballs, our lips, our nose, our bones. Yes, they're all one, but there are all these different parts within us. All these different physical parts make us up. Even our cells are different. Each individual cell is a different part of us, right? That make the whole. So, such as with our personality. You might say, oh, I'm sick. Well, that's not true. Part of you is sick, or part of you is in pain. Part of you hurts. Part of you, feels this way. Part of you is sad. Part of you is angry. Part of you is scared. And there's another part of you completely that might be happy, or might be, there's all kinds of different emotions that we have. And sometimes it gets super confusing. And the reason is because we're not just one thing or the other thing. We're not just all sad. We're not just all angry. We're not just all happy. We're a mix of all kinds of different emotions at once, right? It's just part of us. So it helps to remember that, like, if you had a job, if you were a banker, then you don't say, hi, I'm Lisa, I'm a banker. That's just part of you. Part of you is a banker. The other part of you is a mother, or an artist, or a wife, or a daughter, right? There's all these different roles and different parts within you. So just like there's all these different roles, personality types, emotions, physical pieces of your body, they're all parts that are working together as the whole. We're not just one thing, right? We're a myriad of different parts. And this is why I get so overwhelmed when you're working with parts work, because you're like, yeah, I'm thousands, I'm hundreds, I'm billions of different. How could I possibly try to understand all the different facets, all the different parts, so that I can help myself heal? And maybe there's even a part of you that wants to heal, and a part of you that doesn't, right? There's all kinds of different parts that confuse us, right? There's subconscious parts and patterns too, and then there's conscious parts and patterns. So I understand why people shy away from inner work and particularly parts work, because it seems overwhelming, right? And it seems never ending, but that's not the case. So some of you have been living with these survival parts for so long, these protection, survival parts where your system is really ready to protect you, right? That, you know, and there's a lot of suffering and pain and anxiety and anger and fear, and right, they're very low vibrational states, these primal protection states and these parts of us, and they've risen to the surface and they've sort of taken over everything. And when you've lived with this for a long time, it's hard to see that you have other parts in there, right? Like loving parts and joyful parts and happy parts and compassionate parts and curious parts and parts that have ambition and drive and goals and dreams, parts that are wise. You have healers within you, healing parts within you, right? So you have all of these parts inside you. It's just that the other ones, the more protective parts, the very dominant parts, have risen up and taken over as a way to keep you safe and protect you, that you almost can't even find those other parts. And you're like, no, I just don't have those parts inside me. I don't have a wise healer. I don't have really strong intuition. I don't have happy or joy or goals or dreams or compassion, but they're all in there. You have those parts, but they're being overshadowed by the stronger parts, by the survival parts, right? Because really, your system is meant to have you survive above all else. So it just clouds over all of these other parts, but they're there. And that's what you kind of have to find when you're doing parts work. You want to access all of those different parts so that you can integrate and that it's not so unbalanced, right? Right now you have very unbalanced parts where the protection parts, the survival parts have taken over. So we're all born, or so is the theory in internal family systems, that we're all born with all these parts. We all have kind of the healer, the protector. We all have these different parts within us, right, as we're born. And they're sort of balanced and they're there to do their job when necessary, right? We might need to lash out sometimes. We might need to withdraw. We might need to do all these different things in order to keep us safe. And so we have these different parts of ourselves that kind of have their jobs and their roles, and they're ready to go and take care of us. But when we have traumas and crappy childhoods or different relationships, or when we have these events that happen to us, and we sort of, these parts, these protector parts, need to jump in to help us, to save us, to keep us safe, they get locked in their roles. And often these roles are burdens to them. They don't want to be controlling. They don't want to always be on guard. They don't want to be so vigilant. They're tired. They're exhausted. They're worn out. But they feel like this is their role now and that they have to constantly protect, serve and protect. And all of these other parts that you have are suppressed, right? In favor of some of the more burdensome roles and the harder roles. They are doing an amazing job for you. This is the thing. They're doing an amazing job. They love you and they want to keep you safe. They're here to help you, but they're also hurting you, right? They're hurting you because they're not allowing the other parts of you, the creativity and the curiosity and the hopefulness and the playfulness and all these different parts of you, they're being suppressed, right, in favor of these other parts that are truly there to help you, keep you safe. And those parts are tired, they're exhausted, and they're burdened, and they want to lay down their burden, but they feel like they can't. And so this is where parts work comes in, because we want to unburden ourselves by all these unhealthy, unbalanced roles that your parts are being forced and feel like they must play out in order to protect you, right? So just like a mom who's super protective of her child, at some point she has to stop being that way because the child needs to develop and go out into the world and live the life on their own. So at some point, the mom who's always like, be careful, you know, you can't cross the street, eventually needs to ease up on that role so that the child can experience and express and grow. But within you, the parts within you, they're not easing up. They're not allowing the rest of yourself to develop and grow. So if you look at something like anger or jealousy, or even like a domineering, controlling personality, and you're like, I want to change that. I want to change that, right? So what you're doing, in a sense, is you're invalidating that part. If the part is the controlling personality or the anger outbursting personality, and you just want to change it or shame it or tell it it's bad or it should go away, or if you want to ignore it, you're basically just hurting that part of you. And what we need to do is bring compassion and kindness and love to that part, because it is there to protect you. It is there doing its best for you, although misguided and although stuck and although actually not helping you at all and hurting you in many ways. It is trying its best and is there for a reason and a purpose. And so when we bring compassion and love to the side of it that's controlling, and understanding, like, why is that part there? You know, where did it come from? When did it take on this extreme, unbalanced role in your life? What good did it bring to you? When was it needed? And how can we help it to unburden itself? Because it's exhausted, it's fatigued as well. It doesn't want to be there, right? This is when we get into those long chronic illness things like fibromyalgia or chronic fatigue syndrome, right? These are the parts of yourself that are worn out, that are exhausted, and that want to be unburdened. But we can't unburden them by getting mad at them or ignoring them or shaming them or telling them to go away or hating them. We have to bring compassion and love to them and understand why they're there. Let them tell us why they feel so strongly above all else that they need to be there to protect you. And when you can go in with another part and say, I have a healthier way, I have a healthier way that we can achieve this, a different part can take on more of a role. It's dying, right? These parts that have been suppressed are dying to come up and resume their roles. It's just that these other domineering parts are like, no, I've got this. I understand how this works. This is how I've protected you in the past. This is the way it's going to be. And they almost feel like if they give up that role, then something bad will happen to you. You won't be safe. You'll be abandoned. You'll be rejected. Like whatever it is that you're afraid of most at a survival level will be compromised. But these other roles, right, inside your body, these other parts of you can can protect you in different ways, can help you thrive and grow in different ways. And maybe this part isn't needed anymore so much, but it doesn't know that there are other parts inside you that can help you to achieve this same, these same objectives in a different way. And the thing that gets confusing when you do like a formal parts work training, like internal family systems, is that there's all these parts, all these roles, and it can get confusing because just like kids on the playground or family members within a family, it's not just one part against another. It's usually a whole bunch of different parts, and some are siding with this part and some are siding with this part. So in order to dissolve, say, anger, you might have to, it's got like fear and all kinds of different other parts of you on its side and basically in its corner fighting for it. So then you might have some other parts on the other side that are not as strong, but they're all together. So a lot of times these parts side with each other, or they're there to scold each other or shame each other or get in the way. They bond together or they break each other apart. So it gets really like confusing when you're doing the work. But all it means is it's like a family, like, oh, these two people are siding with this issue or this person, and these two people are together. And so parts often go together. They side with each other. They help each other to stay in their roles and keep their dynamics alive. So often when you're working with parts, you're not just working with one part. It's like if control wants to give up its hold, its grasp, its role, and allow something like playfulness to come in, then you might have to go through fear and all kinds of other parts of yourself. Controlling aspects, you might have to go through parts that are you may have to go through all kinds of different parts in order to have that release, because they're all sort of bound together. And so that's why I don't want you to give up on this and think it's too confusing. Really, I just want you to understand that when we bring understanding, compassion, love to the parts of ourselves that have taken up a role in a survival time for you in order to protect you and keep you safe, that these parts need love, compassion, and understanding in order to relinquish this great burden that they carry and allow other parts that are being suppressed and much needed and haven't had a chance to live and grow and express themselves to come to the light and to be able to express themselves, right? Without these other parts taking over, and that we can achieve some sort of a balance, but we always must do that with trying to understand the parts, giving them love and compassion, and even saying thank you to them. Thank you for protecting me, thank you for keeping me safe for as long as you have. It's not that I'm cutting you off, it's not that I don't need you anymore. I still need you. I need you to be here for when I need you, but I don't need you to be on guard all the time. You can take a break, a well-deserved break. You can just sit back for a while now. Because a lot of times these parts will feel rejected if you just say, I don't want you anymore, I don't need you. Like, they've been there for you at a very instrumental and confusing and traumatic time in your life, and they want to feel needed. They want to feel like thanked. They want to feel appreciated, right? Even though they may have gone overboard, even though they may be hurting you, they want to feel appreciated and thanked and respected and loved and mostly understood. They want to feel like they're valuable parts to you because they've been there for you in times of need. And so we have to find a way to thank these parts of ourselves, to feel true gratitude to them for protecting us, for being there for us, for helping us stay alive, for making it through to today. And then we have to say, it's not that we don't need you. It's not that we don't love you. It's not that we don't thank you and feel thankful and gratitude that you have been here for us and that you've done your best. But I need these other parts. Would you be willing? Ask these parts, would you be willing to allow other parts to try, to take over, to try it this way, to try it that way? And you would be surprised, these parts, it's like you're talking to yourself. It seems kind of weird, but these parts will say, yes, I'm willing to try that. I'm willing to just take a back seat for a little bit, to sit in the back, to watch, to be more of an observer, to not act so quickly, to allow these other parts to come out, that I can share my roles, my responsibilities, that I can take a rest, I can take a break, I can rejuvenate myself. And they long to be unburdened, but they want to be thanked and they want to be asked, are you willing to, let go of your role? It's like if you were a super busy executive at work and you were doing everything. You took on so many roles in your job that were not your roles or responsibilities, but you felt like you needed to do them to get it right. You actually, part of you does not want to be doing that work. Like, you feel sad to have to give up that role, or like that you weren't appreciated and thanked enough, that, part of you is actually sad to give that up because you felt so needed. You felt like you were doing such a good job. And even though you're tired and exhausted, if the people thanked you if they thanked you first, if your bosses thanked you and said, we recognize you, we thank you, we're so grateful that you've been doing this and we can see that you're tired, would you like us to hire some people? That would be a different story. You'd be like, yes, I would. I'm willing to share this role now, to take a break, a well-deserved break, and still feel appreciated, right? But if they just kind of came in and did it and hired everybody, and you might feel like they're pushing you out, or that you aren't respected or appreciated or valued, right? Your value you might feel hurt and sad. But the truth is, you do need a break, and the truth is, it is the right thing for them to do, to bring in other people. But it's just the way it's done. So when we're talking to our parts, it's like we thank them for being there for us, for helping us through the most challenging times in our lives. We give them full gratitude and appreciation and compassion that they're tired. And we ask them, are you willing to allow this part to come in for a while? Are you willing to share the roles? Are you willing to try? And are you willing to take a well-deserved break and sit back and breathe and rest and repair yourself and do some self-care? And if I ever need you to step up, I know that you're capable. I know you can step in and do the job. But for now, I'm going to help you become more balanced so you can feel happier inside and you don't have to be so vigilant, so constantly burdened and vigilant by all these roles that you were never meant to carry. And these parts will feel loved, and they will feel thanked, and they will feel like they're heard and valued, and they will be happy to unburden themselves and to feel more balanced and to breathe and to relax and to recuperate, right? And this is what you want, right? You don't want that part to disappear and go away forever. That controlling nature of yours has helped you. That anger or that on guard, whatever it is that has helped you, right? The way that you withdraw or whatever it is has helped you. It's not like you want to shame it or get it in trouble or tell it to go away forever and you never want to see it again. So when we're talking about even pain or our illness, it's helped you. It has been there. It's not like you never ever want to experience pain again. If you put your hand on a hot stove, you want pain to rush in to remind you not to do that. But it's the constant vigilance and the on guard of this role that is just taken over that can ease up. And that's what we try to do when we do parts work. So we want to love that part. We want to thank that part. We want to allow other parts that have been pushed down because of that part. You usually have an opposite part, the controlling part of you that feels like they need to be in control and have everything perfect, or else you're going to be so overwhelmed and the entire world is going to fall apart, has an opposite part. And that part is the need to be taken care of, to have somebody else do it for you, right? To not have to have all the responsibility. And that part longs to be expressed too. You long to be taken care of and to just lay back and to have somebody else take it over and take the responsibility all off your shoulders, right? There's part of you, and that part's being suppressed in favor of the part that's controlling. And maybe you know that that part is there, the part that wants to be taken care of, but you never let anybody take care of you because the controlling aspect of you takes over and says, no, I know better. I'm going to just plow through and get this done because I don't want anything to, because I know the last time I did, shit hit the fan, and so I'm here to protect you. So you have this need underneath it to just give all the responsibility away and be taken care of. But at the same time, you never allow that to happen because the vigilant, controlling part of you that feels like they need to do everything is always turned up higher. So you're in conflict with yourself because the one need that you have and one part of you is never being allowed to be expressed. Or maybe you go back and forth between the two parts. Maybe you're controlling sometimes, then you fall apart and you need to be taken care of. Then you jump back to being controlling, and then you fall apart and need to be taken care of. And there's another part in there that is like the healthy part that says, hey, I'm like the responsible adult, the parent who can do both, who can prioritize, who can allow others to, I can delegate, and to allow others to do it how they want to do it, and to ask for things when I need it. Maybe you have this other part that never ever gets to come to the surface because it's being taken or suppressed by these other two parts that are kind of battling back and forth to see who's going to be the one to be the dominant, take the dominant role on. And there's another way. There's another part inside you that's like, hey, wait, over here. Give it to me. Why don't you both relax? I got this. And that part never gets a chance to try to learn and grow and maybe fail just like a child. It doesn't get it right the first time when it's growing and developing, but the parent has to let it try sometimes. And so just like all the inner healing work that I talk about, the first step is to become aware, right? We're mindful. We want to be mindful. We want to catch catch our patterns, catch our parts, catch our personality traits, catch our thoughts, like catch what's actually happening. We allow it to express to its full, we allow it to say and to do and to be. We thank it, we love it, we bring compassion to it. And then we ask it, like, can we make room for something different here? We want to unburden ourselves. And so parts work is just kind of a deeper, it's the same as all the other kind of inner work that you do. Only as you notice these parts come up, you compartmentalize them. You almost break them apart as if they're separate beings, separate people with their own identity and their own personality and their own thoughts and their feelings. And you really aim to understand each part, why it's there, what its purpose is, what its role has been, why it feels the need. And you might want to negotiate with it. You might want to talk to it, to love it, to ask its permission, and really seek to understand it so that it can feel totally validated and loved and appreciated, and then it can give up this unbalanced way that it is in your life. So it's just like any kind of inner work that we do. And if you haven't seen some of my videos on the inner work, go watch that, right? It complements mindfulness. It complements inner child work. It complements all of these different methodologies that you do to do the inner healing work. And it's just another way of looking at yourself, relating to yourself and your emotions and your feelings, understanding them, letting them be allowed to be there, understanding why they are, giving them thanks, love, compassion, and kindness. And that's what you're doing to yourself, so that, you know, these fragmented parts of your being can really integrate back together, because you just strive to become a whole person again, a whole, complete, healthy, healed person. And so I hope that this video has been helpful. I hope it's given you an idea about what parts work is and how it works with everything else that we do for inner healing work. If you have any questions, put them in the comments, and I will see you in the next video.